One of the special things about the northern defences and in Gibraltar generally is that there's not just one moment in time which has been frozen. It's a whole evolution on a series of layers of, in this particular case, military innovation. So just behind me, sometimes we attempted to remove sections to take it back to the original. But what is the original? So from the Second World War elements that we can see here, we have what is a Victorian arch upon what is Georgian battlements, but those themselves sit upon the Spanish medieval walls, and then those would have been upon the Arabic ones. And there you can also see the bedrock. So what we have behind us is essentially 1,000 years of military history just captured in one shot. That's what makes Gibraltar absolutely unique.
Just a little above casemates, government architect Carl Viagas guides me up a staircase and through a tunnel or two that takes us through to the northern defences, or the jungle as many of us know it by. It's a lot less wild now than it was a few decades ago, but Carl is casting an eye far further back than that as we continue to uncover the role this area played in fortifying Gibraltar over the course of a millennium.
With the northern defences, its primary role was to defend what was the landport gate. That, in any castle, is the most important asset that you have. Once the enemy is in, you're in deep trouble. So the northern defences consists of a whole series of towers and layers of military fortifications focused on that gate, its bridge, and its entrance and causeway. And in front of us what we have is the Tower of Homage and the castle walls that until recently they could hardly be seen because of the amount of vegetation that was growing up against them. So not only have we created a much needed fire break, but it also has served to highlight what are the defensive lines, not just the castle walls themselves, but also here they're still obscured. There's a second line of defense, which is referred to as Hanover Line, and it's a musketry position that goes from this area all the way to the wall.
The ongoing works are leading to revelations from the past that require us to re-evaluate what we thought we knew about these defences, tying into other recent discoveries such as that of the remains of the famous Round Tower.
That tower was designed to keep the enemy at bay, but if one would notice, the tower itself was always vulnerable from attack from above. Yes, it would take almost like a specialist force to be able to assault Gibraltar in that way, and it did happen in 1705. But in order to counter that, there's a first line of defense. And this, what we are uncovering today, is that very first line of defense, that even though the steps here have been stated as being British, they clearly sit on what are previous lines. And it's fantastic how we see the engineers of the time using the natural landscape and topography to fortify the rock. So we have this wall with a gully on its northern side, so any enemy would have to assault the rock by going up a scree slope, being fired upon at this level, and should the defenders find their position compromised, they would then retreat onto the second line of defence.
This claim shakes up the established narrative that the structure was just British, and instead suggests this vantage point protected against incoming forces by land for centuries before the British arrived, who then altered, reinforced and expanded the defences into what we see today.
So what we can see here is a section of wall which I always questioned, maybe it was for those to stand and fire upon the enemy, but now looking at previous plans, it shows that this particular wall was not so much a wall but a series of steps that would curve round and connect to what is the bottom of the retrenchment steps. So probably what has happened here is that the bottom section of the wall would have been demolished, removed, and the material that would have been left over would have been reused, which is what we are doing today. In this particular case, to create an alternative staircase, which just follows what is the topography of the landscape.
As the rich history of the northern defences continues to unfold, Carl is adamant about how much this area has to offer locals and tourists, as he assures that exciting projects for both are in the pipeline. For now, he continues questioning the past in order to inform his vision for a vibrant future.
What's very clear now is that the first line of defence virtually cuts from what is or goes along the Orlon Gap. So it protects the northern part of Gibraltar from any attack. But what's also interesting is the height at which the Round Tower would be. And that leads perfectly onto what is the Gate of Granada. So I think what we need to question is precisely that, whether that gate, was it indeed an entrance into the town, or was it a communication to what was a very strategic defensive point?